Ba 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 ba. Yeah, streaming. What? Yeah. Ba 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 ba. Here we go now. Just so you guys know, I'm looking down. Here's my little pug, right? Milo. I just got him back from my ex. So he's going to be very distracting today. Yes, he's a very distracting little guy. Just finishing up another week of capitalism coming in to the days off. Literally got home, went right to sleep. Boy, does it ever take it out of me, man. Boy, does it ever take it out of me. And I'm doing like, and the job that I do for capitalism isn't even one of the more intense ones, honestly. Like, I feel like if you're out there and you're doing like a highly physical job, you're like a construction worker, you're doing any of that kind of stuff, boy howdy does capitalism have its feet and its claws in you, right? That the promise of capital was always out of reach for someone like me, but for the lumpentariat, right? It's a new phenomenon. Conton, Ligon to good to see you. And yet, was it Stalin or Engels that brought up the theory of social murder? It was Engels. For sure it was Engels. Grinning, good to see you. Those storms hit you? Seen Vermont? Looks like a colonized nation, to be honest. Oh, goodness. Colonized by storms, right? The big colonizing storms. It's raining right now, in fact, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Oh yeah, can we maybe address that we are watching social murder in 4K right now? Absolutely, dude. Like, absolutely. Like, if this is what we need to be talking about, like, we are structuring our economy, we are structuring our society in order to commit an enormous and massive atrocity against its own people. That's the thing that's so stunning about all of this, right? That we could simply not. Like, that's the part about it that I think is the most stunning thing is this realization that we could just provide food and shelter for everyone. We could just move the economy in such a way so that we move away from this climate change catastrophe. We could have been doing these things all along. We could be doing them now. The solutions that exist, certainly for providing food and shelter, are actually not that difficult. They are things that we have already done before in the past, right? We could definitely do them again. We are choosing, as a people, actively choosing to ignore them and instead provide services like medical assisted dying to people who are in poverty. Like, it's and one of the things that I'm becoming steadily more aware of, or that I became aware of and then kind of forget, and then remember, and then forget, and then remember, because it's sort of horrible, is that it is the people themselves, right? Like, we can only pretend like this is the wealthy class, I think, are crying out for a social murder of some sort. You watch movies like The Purge, for God's sakes, and you're like, yeah, the people themselves are crying out for this kind of bloodletting, almost like a massive. Conton writes, I don't mean to harp on it like this, but correct me if I'm wrong, but social murder is a legal and policy-based structure of causing accidental deaths to undesirables. I mean, I don't. Accidental is the wrong word, right? Incidental would be the word that you want to use. That if you indiscriminately bomb a city, the deaths that you are hitting on the civilian population are not accidental, but they are incidental, that you are attempting to achieve a military goal, and perhaps you're even attempting to hit military targets. And so the civilian deaths are inevitable, but they're incidental, and but they're not accidental, right? You know that you're going to be killing civilians. And it's the same thing with the policies that we have enacted, that the goal of the prevailing ruling structure is just to make line go up. That's all. It's just to make line go up, right? Line go up, a number high, and that's it. And we've ended up with a psychopathic ruling class, and the people who defend the ruling class are just bootlickers and psychopaths themselves. If not medically psychopathic, then they're just acting like psychopaths because that's what gets rewarded in this society. And this incredibly egregious psychopathic behavior is manifesting itself in ways that are extraordinarily obvious. Like Elon Musk buying Twitter alone. The whole fight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, like it's childish, it's overwhelmingly stupid, it's embarrassing, and anybody with even a modicum, even a small, tiny, itsy bitsy little bit of awareness, can see very clearly that this rivalry or this situation is a complete and total indictment of the system that generated these people. Why do these people have control of a communications network of any sort? Why are these people involved at all in this process whatsoever, when it's so obvious that they're using these systems as basically just dick measuring contests and dick waving contests, right? And Elon, like, think about the resources that Elon Musk put in to get Twitter. Think about the resources that Mark Zuckerberg put in to create Threads. Think about the resources that are being wasted in order to make this absolute petty, childish, narcissistic, psychopathic rivalry be displayed fully for the entire world to see. And imagine if you're the entire rest of the world watching, this is the result of American capitalism. That instead of using any amount of resources in order to alleviate the obvious homelessness crisis, the obvious fentanyl crisis, the obvious mass shooting crisis, just the obvious climate change crisis, instead of using those resources in order to confront serious and major issues that are obviously directly in front of us, we're just watching a dick measuring contest on a platform that should have been made public in the first place. Like, Twitter should be a public platform. It's like saying the telephone service should not be owned by the people. Like, what are you talking about? Grinning says, colonized as in mugged of all resources and can't help themselves. Biden is sending in the redistribution to address the shortfall. I'm sure that Biden will absolutely address the shortfall. Right? He's certainly not sending in organizations in order to pilfer as much wealth and money from the society as possible. Right? Like, it certainly isn't a grift. Certainly is him being like, yes, I am definitely here to help this time, not like last time, or the time before that, or the time before that, or the time before that, or the time before that. No, this time it's absolutely true. It's absolutely the case that I am definitely here to, for sure, actually help. Guys, give me 1 second. I gotta help Milo out for a second. Come here, buddy. You want a treat? Come here. Come here. What do you get? You want a treat? Yeah, you do. Little guy. Little guy. Here you go, buddy. Here you go, buddy. Here you go, buddy. Sorry about that, guys. I literally just got Milo back, so he's doing all the things you expect him to do. doing all the things you expect him to do. Redlining, Jim Crow, AIDS epidemic, satanic panic, austerity, and this anti-LGBT policies. I feel like we should talk about this concept more broadly. Social murder? Yeah, I mean, like, to me, it's the beating heart of everything, right? That you think about how ridiculous it is that there are people who exist in the society that just refuse to acknowledge that it is a society. That if a millionaire has wealth, if a billionaire has wealth, it's because they earned it, and the concept of them earning it means that they can do whatever they like with it, right? That all of their arguments are the same arguments that someone like Ted Bundy would use, right? Like, but I earned it, right? So I earned killing these children, and so it should be fine. There's no ability by the defenders of capitalism at this point. Like, they lack the basic ability to struggle with moral and ethical concepts because they have lost the ability to understand what morality or ethics actually are. That power justifies itself. That's as far as they're willing or capable of going. And I think we are in this stage that it's not that they're unwilling to do it. It's not that they're unwilling to grapple with moral concepts. It's that they're incapable. That the system has structured itself and has been structured to reward rapacious psychopaths, pro-slavers, colonizers, and because they have the overwhelming power that they have, they simply don't need to ever come up with any kind of ethical justification for it. It justifies itself, but they earned it. Is a perfect articulation of this self-justification, of this sort of circular logic that they have it, therefore they earned it. It's pretty much the same as the divine rights of kings, right? That he was born into this position and therefore God must have bestowed him with the glory and all of this kind of stuff. Mr. Moon, good to see you, bud. Got to work this morning, sat in my car listening to a song so I could have 5 minutes of meaning before my 8 hours of meaninglessness. Yeah, isn't that the way? Isn't that the way? Isn't it fun that we have food and shelter withheld from us and everyone thinks that that's normal? Like, it's just completely normal that like, what's the entire point? Kevin, good to see you, bud. Isaac, good to see you too, man. The entire point of erecting any kind of system of distribution is to lessen the burden. That the only way that an institution like a big box store or like a Walmart or a Target or anything like that can justify its existence is by saying we are lessening the burden on the populace, because we were providing these services for ourselves previously, right? It's not like humanity was starving before these places showed up. It's just that the promise of capital was always this will increase the efficiency, this will make it easier and better and cheaper and all of this. And now we're literally in a state here in Canada, 1 out of every 4 people, 25% of the populace, is failing to pay their bills. Like, that is a systemic failure. And to pretend as though it's an individual issue where people just need to bootstrap themselves, it's become psychotic. Like, you actually have to be a detached psychopath to think this way. That 1 out of every 4 people is just lazy, is just not trying, just needs to work harder, just needs to get a better job. It's a detached narcissistic psychopathy. And there's no other way to describe it. That if you are actually going to say out loud that people should starve because they're not working hard enough for a system that withholds the resources, well, get completely bent. Like, get completely bent. You're not obliged to follow the laws of institutions that have abandoned you. Like, Robin Hood didn't ask permission from Prince John, right? Luke Skywalker didn't ask Darth Vader's permission. These institutions are obviously overtly corrupt and evil, and people need to eat. Like, people like Galen Weston, like, his wishes do not supersede the demands of the universe itself, and it's absurd that we've elevated these billionaires, these losers, these total idiots, into a strata or a position where they can have a meaningful influence on our politics. And you can see, again, I talk about Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, this whole rivalry that's going on. Like, it's pathetic. Like, either one of these gentlemen could be doing major, massive reforms by themselves. Like, they don't even need to ask permission. They don't need to go through the Congress or the Senate. They don't need to influence the political system directly. They could literally be doing it by themselves. And they're choosing not to. They're choosing not to. And it is just simply because it doesn't matter to them at all. Like, they only care about themselves, and they only ever did care about themselves. And the rest of the world is responding correctly, which is to get the fuck away from us. Just get the fuck away from us. Like, we've lost our minds. We're completely detached from reality. One of my and stupid, like fundamentally stupid. One of the funny things that I've seen recently was that this administration, the Ford administration that I'm under right now, have started up wind and solar programs in order to shore up their electricity needs. And the reason why this is so fundamentally stupid is that one of the first things that Doug Ford did when he came into power is he scrapped over 700 green energy programs. He spent over $200 million to do it, to scrap all of these green energy programs. And now, like 6 years on from that, they're turning around and they're kicking that all back up because they've come to realize, oh, there was a reason why people were doing that. There was a reason why the nation and the country was moving in that direction. There's a reason why the society was moving in that direction. Oh, it turns out that wind and solar energy was actually going to help us with our power grid. It actually was going to transition us into a green economy. So now the very people responsible for destroying that initiative, for setting us back at least 6 years, but it'll be more like 20 at least, are now they themselves reinvesting in this. That one of the things that the Ford administration has been criticized widely of is that it's sitting on like $22 billion of surplus. And my assumption has always been that the reason why they're sitting on that surplus is so that they can figure out a way to get it in their own pockets. But I think a big part of the reason why they're doing that is because they're so desperately stupid and desperately incompetent that they don't know what to do with it. And now they're doing all of the studies and doing all the initiatives themselves and finding out that, oh, the things that the previous government were doing is actually correct, and we should just do those. Yeah, almost guaranteed that Ford only wanted to make sure his buddies got the contracts. Yeah, I mean, that's possible, right? But like, who are the people who are going to do this work, right? It's going to be the same people, you know? Like, there's not that many like solar panel manufacturers. Yeah, the Supreme Court shooting down affirmative action for colleges seems like social murder in action. Yeah, and like the legacy of slavery, that's the most baffling one. Like, your skin is black, therefore you are inferior. Like, I can't think of a dumber way of looking at the world. Just like a reduced, limited view. Wasn't Elon Musk going to end hunger in the world 2 years ago? Yeah, there's a series of tweets where he said, like, if someone just gives me a priced out plan, and then somebody does, right? It wouldn't be that expensive. The problem isn't that we're not producing the food, right? The problem is the system of capital. That in terms of production, we're producing more than we need. We throw out way more food than we actually need to solve the problem. It's a distribution issue, right? Because the system of capital withholds the food in the first place, and it has no method. There is no method in the system of capital to get resources to people who have no resources to trade for it. And people only have their labor. But of course, if you're one of these nightmare psychos, right, you don't care about the labor of someone in Yemen. Like, it doesn't matter to you. And if you can't exploit their labor, or if you're unwilling to even do that, then you'll just stand back and watch them starve. And that's exactly what they're doing. Grinning says, if you can't talk about race with college admissions, you're going to end up talking about class. I see opportunities moving forward. Oh, that's an interesting perspective, Grinning. That's an interesting perspective. Don't make the conversation about race. Make it about poverty. Make it about. But I mean, we all know what the goal is here, right? We all know what the goal is. The goal is to make sure that the ruling class is white. That's the goal, right? And it's always going to be the goal of the American ruling class. That there is no that the only people of color who are being permitted into the system are people who act as the Uncle Toms, the people who act as the apologists for the system of white supremacy that exists throughout America. That the American ruling class is terrified that white people are steadily becoming a minority group, right? That there are states rather where Hispanics are beginning to become the majority group. And that terrifies the ruling structure, terrifies it dramatically, terrifies it desperate. Grinning, I just cleaned my 12th toilet today, just 3 more to go. I believe in you, my man. You're doing God's work. That's good work, man. Like, you think about that kind of work. Like, that's real work, right? Like, that's the real work that actually needs to be done. That someone like yourself should easily, like, you should have a house, a car, like, you should be your life should be easy, right? Your life should be easy. That there should be an ease, a release of burden in all of this, you know? Like, that's the most embarrassing. Like everybody's celebrating the fact that people are getting jobs at, like, McDonald's and shit, and it's like, what are you talking about? We should, as a society, do almost no work. Like, we should be doing the least possible amount of work all of the time. This sort of manic, crazed praise of just grind set mindset, sacrifice your entire life to grinding your head against this stone of selling your labor, and then there'll be some kind of reward later on down the line. It's like, it's what a joke. Like, what a joke. Content says, just finished cleaning surgery rooms, now to do regular hospit. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. See, and isn't it funny, right? I think I have always thought that it was, even as a kid, like, when I was growing up, everyone around me was like, you got to get to university or you'll end up like this guy. And this guy was the janitor, right? That there was a janitor for my school, and everybody used him as this example of, like, oh, you don't want to end up with this, like this guy. And even as a kid, I was like, but this guy is, like, cleaning everything. Like, this guy's making sure that the place is neat and tidy and orderly and organized, and that when we come into the place, there isn't filth everywhere. Right? And, like, it's like this tacit admission. It's like this tacit admission that we despise any work that is about maintenance, right? And it's very strange. We're this very strange sort of people. Yeah, 80% of the work done doesn't add any value. Like, it is a lot of busy work. There's a lot of busy work in the society, for sure. Like, the banking sector, for example, is mainly just busy work. Like, transferring dollars into francs and then into euros and then back into dollars. Right? Doing, like, day trading. It's, like, the most meaningless stuff. Grinning says, I can make $40 as a janitor. No. No capitalist taking my value from me. Still can't afford to own a house, though. Hospital cleaning moves slow. 10-minute dwell times are torture. Brutal. Our collective labor is killing the planet. Always good to keep that in mind. Well, and this is what I say over and over again. We would be better off to just, like, walk into fields and stare at the sky. Like really. We're getting to this point as a people. Like, for God's sakes. I just did a TikTok about this. Earth reaches hottest day ever recorded 4 days in a row. The hottest 4 days that have ever been recorded just happened. Right? Like, and we're all just sort of walking around pretending like this is okay. We're all just walking around. Like, and everybody I'm talking to, like when I'm at work, people come in and they're like, oh, hot day, but it's beautiful out there. Oh, enjoy the weather while you've got it. Ha ha. Right? And I'm just like, concerning. Right? Concerning. But it just seems as though we as a people have decided to just disconnect from it. That we're like living in this la la land where everything is just completely, totally fine. And then the response from people who are actually against this, right? Oh, it's all just woke nonsense. As if that's a point. As if that's like a win for them, right? As if giving it the word wokeism and then rolling your eyes and walking away from the disaster you're creating is somehow a victory. It's shocking to watch. Where I work, we do something, then a manager comes in and has us redo what we did. Years later, we go back to what we did in the first place, and the cycle repeats. Yeah, there's this great story that I love to tell that I think is in line with this, which is you take a group of monkeys, right, and then you set up a hill, and then at the top of the hill you put a banana, right, and any monkey that goes and tries to get the banana gets punished, right? And until all of the monkeys understand that if you go up and you try to get that banana, you're going to face some kind of consequence, and it's not going to be nice for you. And so, what you do is you put in a monkey who has never seen that there's a consequence. He just sees the banana, and then he tries to go get the banana, but then all of the other monkeys will prevent that monkey from getting the banana, right? Without seeing the consequence. The monkeys will just prevent the new monkey from getting the banana. And then very steadily, you can replace all of the monkeys until finally there are no monkeys that understand why you don't go get that banana. Everybody just intrinsically knows you don't go get that banana. And that's basically how corporate policy works. That everything just exists because it's how it is, and no one challenges it, and everybody just reinforces for reasons, and that's what's called corporate culture, right? That's what's called corporate culture. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about corporate culture, is how to reinforce the bad ideas that we have implemented through time. I was thinking just the other day about like the times that I have spent any amount of time working in corporate environments for corporate cultures, and I've seen organizations go from being non-corporate to corporate. And the big lesson for me is that the moment I find out that a organization is moving into corporate, I leave, because corporate culture, quote unquote corporate culture, is basically just like, it's this narcissistic psychopathy. It's this absurdist, inhuman nonsense where the people who are involved in it become inhuman. Like, I remember working with like a district manager in a non-corporate setting, and they were very human, and everything was very like, oh yeah, we need to move forward, and these are the ideas and all this. Right, and if you made a mistake, they'd be like, "Oh well, you made a mistake, didn't you? Okay, well, don't do that again." and whereas in corporate environments, like, it's all very fascistic, and there are punishment structures and all of this kind of stuff, and there's no sense of just basic humanity, right? That there's no sense of just the base humanity of a person, and my advice to anybody, if you are able to get out of corporate environments, just do so. Just do so, right? But of course, the issue is that now they're allowing corporations to vote. So it's not going to be too long until there won't be anything until corporate environments, because corporations will basically just take over everything, right? That the corporation wants to spread itself. Like the Borg. Like the Borg. No shocker in all of this, right? No shocker in all of this. Nearly half of Canadians have lost sleep over financial stress, especially young people. No surprise. As the country grapples with rising living costs and inflation, not to mention climate change, right? The climate catastrophe. A new report reveals that for the 6th consecutive year, money remains the primary source of stress for Canadians, particularly for younger Canadians. According to a survey conducted by Ledger on behalf of FP Canada, almost half of young Canadians, aged between 18 and 34, are most stressed about money, while 46% have encountered mental health challenges as a result. On the other hand, Canadians aged 65 and above say they experience relatively lower level of money-related stress compared to other age groups, with 28% reporting financial stress. However, the survey findings indicate that money-related concerns are not limited to younger Canadians alone. Big shocker here. In fact, 40% of over the 2,000 Canadian surveys expressed significant money-related stress and concerns in 2023. This represents a 2% increase compared to 2022. The survey highlights the widespread impact of financial challenges on the overwhelming overall well-being of Canadians, and that a substantial portions of Canadians, 36%, experience the negative impacts, including anxiety, depression, and mental health challenges of financial stress. Nearly half of Canadians said they have lost sleep due to financial worries. This marks a 5% increase from the previous year. Canadians continue to struggle with their financial picture, and financial stress can have a significant impact not only on financial well-being but also on mental health. FB Canada President and CEO Tasia Batstone said in a press release. The survey also found 48% of Canadians have less disposable income compared to a year ago, a substantial increase from 2022, 39%. It's almost a 10% increase. Furthermore, 35% of Canadians said that they are struggling to save money for retirement, while 32% said they're experiencing the same with saving for a major purchase. The portion is higher, 50%, among Canadians aged 80 to 34. The survey was found that Canadians who work with a financial planner are less prone to money-related stress. Here you go. Here's the thrust of the piece. Get a financial planner. There you go, guys. We solved it. We solved it. Certainly, no structural issues here, guys. That the solution is actually just get a financial planner, right? No discussion about the policies that we've enacted. No discussions about the failures of neoliberalism. No discussions about the rise of fascism in the country. No discussions whatsoever about the wealth disparity that exists. No meaningful discussions about the obvious overt grifts that have been perpetrated on the populace, right? Get a financial planner. That's what it is. That's the solution, you guys. We did it. We solved the problem. Don't go up the hill. That's where the demons are. How can there be no God when the banana fits the human hand perfectly? Exactly. Checkmate, atheists. This is one that I found. You guys know me, that I am a big proponent in finding stories that are coming out of the working class, coming out of just regular people, finding their finding out the nature of reality and coming to the end of it. A fellow by the name of Karl Marxman just came into the chat. That's a beautiful name, Karl Marxman. I don't know if I've ever seen you in here before, mate, but Karl Marxman, that's a great name, dude. This is from the subreddit Lost Generation. from a fellow by the name Tired Worker 27. I'm 35 and my life is already over. Until a few months ago, I still believed that me and the girlfriend could still somehow make it. But over the past year, it has become abundantly clear that we have reached our financial peak. It's all downhill from here. 2 years ago, we had $30,000 saved for a deposit. The exploding prices and inflation have reduced this to just $10,000 by now. We both have degrees, but struggle to pay rent and the necessities. It's over. We will never have the privilege of owning and building a home. We will never experience the joy of being a mother, a father, and raising the next generation. All we can do is to maintain our current standard of living at an increased workload every year. We have no future, nothing to look forward to. I am going to get drunk now and cry. Have a better night and a better life than me. I wish you the best of luck. These stories are becoming more and more common. These stories are becoming more and more common as people begin to understand that they live and operate in a system that has abandoned them completely. That the structure of the society is one of extraction and abandonment, and that there's nothing, there is no social change coming. There is no reformist movement. There is no meaningful counter movement because the prevailing power structure has seen to it, has made it so that any counter movement is just marginalized onto the fringes at best, and then or assassinated or done away with at worst. Karl Marxman says, I feel that so hard. Everything I do is over the background of why bother. I want to care. I want to connect. Want to strive and form community and love, but it's all fucked. Yeah. Like, that's the truth. The thing that sort of astounds me the most about all of this, about everything that we're doing, is that we still go to work. Like, that's the thing that astounds me the most, is that everybody, it just seems as though a malaise has come over everybody. That there's just this malaise that has come over everyone, and we're all just sort of shrugging our way into the apocalypse. Like, just shuffling grimacingly into this overt catastrophe. And not only do we still continue to go to work, we still encourage our children to go to school. We still encourage, we still pretend as though we're not facing this overwhelming catastrophe. That while there are people in the conversation who are fairly clearly demented and fairly clearly deluded, and that's the far right, right? The people who are seizing power, right, are essentially utterly demented and deluded people. But the liberals in the conversation, even though they acknowledge that there's obviously a problem, are just kind of just shrugging along with it and saying, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Mr. Moon says, yeah, we're just barely tolerating this. I feel like I'm constantly on the edge. Last week, I felt the urge to intentionally crash my car on the way to work. Yeah. Like, and those impulses, right? Those impulses, the call to the void, the desire to act in such a way, those calls are going to become more prescient, more a part of our day-to-day life. And people are going to act on those. Like, that is essentially what school shootings are, right? It's just people acting on these impulses, people acting on this thrumming recognition that something has gone completely and totally wrong. That you can tell that the populace is overwhelmingly confused because instead of going to the places where power actually resides and doing these kinds of dramatic actions. They're going into schools, you know? So instead of a mass shooting happening at like a legislature building, right? Instead of something like that occurring at the Congress or something, right? It's happening in schools. That highlights a very large sense of confusion. People don't understand how power works or where power is concentrated. People don't understand what's actually happening in their own countries or communities. That we've become infantile. We've become infantile, and we've been infantilized, and it's in our media, it's in everything, that we're just being treated as children, and we don't seem to understand that, and we seem more or less fine with being treated as children. That all of our, like, yet another Spider-Man movies come out. The movie that came out recently that has everybody going like, oh goodness, what, I can't believe this one's taking over, is essentially just CIA propaganda. It's I forget the name. It's like the Fallen Soldier, the Forbidden Soul. I forget the name of it offhand, so I don't know why I'm citing it. But the plot of the movie is about a Homeland Security agent finding sex trafficking rings and pedophile rings and breaking them up. So it's a work of fiction that's aggrandizing an organization that does not do this thing. Like the Homeland Security does not go after sex pedophile rings or any of this. It's they exist in order to protect these organizations, not the other way around. Yeah, something like The Sound of Freedom. Yeah, like. Literally just a propaganda film to convince the populace that an organization like Homeland Security has any justification for existing in the first place. Yeah, a dumbass title for a dumbass people, right? Real simple. Like real simple. Like we're not intelligent. Gonna lift weights and drink. Here we go. Karl Marxman says, we live in deteriorating cities in a failing state at the head of a crumbling empire on a dying planet in an uncaring universe. And we're folding t-shirts and frying fish. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's kind of encapsulates it, doesn't it? I think the thing that kills me the most when I think about it, right, is like the people who are actually like having kids, you know? The people who actually had kids, people who are raising kids, it's like, what are you doing? Like what are you doing here? Like you're spawning in randomly generated life forms so that you can abandon them, pretty straightforwardly. Like mothers and will go through the hardship of pregnancy. Go through this absolutely ridiculous physical absurdity, and and then turn around and completely abandon their own children. Like it's wild. It's wild to watch. Jay Peterson, I don't know if I've ever seen you here, bud. Why don't you do public debates? Get some exposure to broader audiences. Well, first of all, Jay, there's a couple of issues, okay? So, issue the one, I'm not exactly a large channel, and so I don't get prioritized, right? So if I request debates, I basically get ignored, right? Because I'm not a very large channel in the first place. I've been shadow banned. I've been sort of pushed to the margins in the first place. So growing this channel is a slow and steady endeavor that is going to take a long time in the first place. So, number one, I get widely ignored. Number two, I am skeptical that these quote-unquote debates are useful, right? Like, usually what happens in when you see these debates is one person ends up being a lecturer and another person just ends up being a dumbass. And if it's not the case, then you just end up with two dumbasses. And I find them to be tedious. I find them to be annoying. I don't think they're actually that beneficial. I think that there's like a bit of hype that surrounds them. And frankly, I think about myself doing a debate, and I think it would be exhausting. Like, I think it would just be exhausting and annoying. And that I don't think that the people who are defending the system of capital are competent. I don't think that they actually have interesting things to say. I don't think that, and moreover, I don't think that they're actually interested in a meaningful debate. I don't think they're actually interested in having a genuine conversation about the subject. That if at this stage in the game, if you're defending the system of capital, it's because you're demented. You have a type of dementia. You're obviously an absurd person, and that such a person is not going to be interested in meaningfully confronting or seriously confronting the issues that we're facing. That it's just going to be a series of childish diatribes and insinuations and insults. And it's just going to, all it's going to end up being for the people who would be facilitating such a debate would be a way to haughtily proclaim their own victory, even though they're illiterate, incompetent psychos mainly. Like there's no value in it. It just ends up being like a type of intellectual masturbation, and it just ends up being a way for each side of said debate to declare their own personal victory based on whatever terms they want, and then move on with their lives. So it's more like a business contract, right? And really, like, to put the finest possible point I can on it, at this stage in the game, if you're willing to stand up and defend the system of capital, it's because you're a psychopath. You're not actually intellectually credible. You're not actually capable of intellectual thought. You have ceded your intellectual territory. You are a psychopath. And if you're not directly like a medically diagnosable psychopath, then you're just acting that way because that's what the power structure rewards. And so to get into a debate with these people is meaningless, because they have detached from reality. And that really, truthfully, a debate with these people would simply be an investigation on when's the moment they detach from reality. And for a lot of these guys, it happens pretty fast, right? It happens pretty fast. So I don't need to get into a quote unquote debate with somebody to point out that they're demented, right? And there's no, I just don't see the value of it. Like, I just don't see the value of it at all. Abandoning kids we shouldn't have is the only way to continue the cycle of abuse, though. Guys, what else is there to do? Yeah. Like, like, I say this, and I've been saying this all along. Like, I feel like if you're under the age of 30, like, there's just no reason. Like, if you're in school right now, the only thing that you should be doing that has any value the only thing that you should be doing that has any value is organizing walkouts. That's the only thing that you should be doing. You should just be leaving. Jay says, so you truly think that anyone who thinks capitalism has some merit is demented or psychopathic? Because that's a lot of people. Yeah. No, and I don't pull back on that. Like, I don't back off on that. Like, if the majority of the population believes that it's okay to round up minority groups and put them into furnaces, like, I don't give a crap that it's a lot of people that think this way. Like, that doesn't bother me at all in terms of my personal position. Like, a big reason why people go along with these sorts of things A big reason why people go along with these sorts of things is because they want to be on the in group. That if you speak to people on an individual one-to-one level, people can say things like, oh yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, or I'm not interested in that, or any of that kind of stuff, but they'll go along with it. This is what centrism is all about. And now, Jay, you're just sort of illustrating the centrist point that I'm trying to make, which is that if you remain neutral in a situation that is exploitive by its very nature, that is destroying people by its very nature, then you're essentially siding with the oppressor, because it doesn't. If they can just continue moving forward with the plan that they have, and you're not going to stand in their way. And I just don't think you're being very honest about what the system of capital actually is, and what it's doing, and how it's acting, and what its consequences are. Like, this isn't about a simple disagreement. This isn't like, I think the Bible should be blue and not red. This isn't just a simple. This is literally, like, let me use a very simple analogy to give you a sense of where my mind is and where my position is, Jay. Just to give you a real sense of where I'm coming from. Let's say you lived in a city that was under siege. You literally could go to the walls, look out over the army that was actively sieging. Like, let's make it fun, right? Let's say that you were at Helm's Deep, and you were standing on the ramparts, and you were looking over, and there were all these orcs, thousands and thousands of orcs out there. You could see them. They were shouting, they were chanting, right? The Eye of Sauron in the distance, staring at Helm's Deep. Literally Nazgul in the skies, screaming their heads off, right? And you're standing at the ramparts, watching this group of orcs that are obviously there to siege and destroy the city, right? And so you go to the leadership of the city and say, hey, what are you going to do about this giant army of orcs that is out there that obviously is planning on coming in here and destroying us? And their response is, what orcs? This is dementia. We are looking at a demented group of demented people, and the people who are defending this system, are just as demented. This is not a minor disagreement. And moreover, this is not like a silly disagreement. This is not a disagreement like, the earth is flat. Like, honestly, if it was, who cares? Like, it doesn't pay my bills. It doesn't change the way things operate. That what we are looking at is a quote-unquote disagreement about whether or not there is an army outside the city that's going to kick in the doors and kill your family. That is what we are talking about, actually. And the people who are denying it, or the people who are downplaying it, or the people who are apologizing for it, or the people who are hand-waving it away, are demented psychopaths and should be treated that way. Full stop. You should not be their friends. You should push them out of your friend groups. You should ridicule them and mock them openly. That we should be making art that makes them explicitly the bad guys and the villains. That we should be portraying them as the demented lunatics that they actually are. Because they are just as demented and crazed as people who would look out over an army of orcs and say they don't exist. Good to see you, Eric. Good to see you, Jahone. The Eye of Sauron had value. Yeah. Look at how productive the orcs were. The orcs were very productive, right? They were an industrious people, right? They tore up that forest really quickly, right? Like the hobbits just needed to learn how to pay their taxes. They just need to follow the rules. Like, it's yeah, Sauron the job creator, right? He's creating industry, right? That when the eye blew up and when the ring got thrown in and the eye blew up, it was like, oh no, the economy, right? Oh no, the economy. John, your orc analogy could easily be twisted into some fascist xenophobic rhetoric. Yeah, but they're gonna do that anyway, bud. Like, the fascists in the conversation, like the Ben Shapiros and the Petersons and the Crowders and all these guys, like they're gonna do that anyway, no matter what you do, right? Like, so you can't stop them. Like, and it doesn't matter what analogy you use. Jay asks, what's my opinion on China, John? Do you think the West should strive for what they have? I mean, I think that China, a lot of questions about China are going to be answered in the next 20 years. But my feeling, so I'll tell you what we know. Number one, the Chinese themselves are over the moon about the oh, do I have that poll? I need to get this stuff organized a little bit better. The Chinese themselves are over the moon about their own government. That Harvard, this is from the Harvard Gazette, did a 17-year-long poll of China, and the survey team found that compared to public opinion patterns in the U.S. and China, there was a very high satisfaction with the central government. In 2016, the last year the survey was conducted, 95.5% of respondents were either relatively satisfied or highly satisfied with Beijing. Compare that to the United States. U.S. satisfaction with federal government revealed only 38% of respondents were satisfied with the federal government. So you have to, in my view, begin with the understanding that the Chinese themselves are enormously in favor of what's happening. So any criticism that you want to put on the Chinese culture, any criticism that you want to put on there, gets superseded by the Chinese themselves, because you don't know anything about China. You don't. This talking point, Jay. Like, can you absolutely imagine what this would actually entail? Like, what you're actually saying? Like, can you actually imagine what that would actually mean? Right? Harvard goes into China and talks to Chinese people, but you can't trust those numbers because the CCP censors people, right? And I got to tell you, when you actually look at the people who the CCP are censoring, those people should be censored. Like, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think that fascists should be silenced, right? And when you actually look at the people who China actually does censor, you're like, oh yeah, these people were Nazis. Like, my favorite one to point out is Falun Gong, right? Do you know Shen Yun? I don't know where you live, so I don't know if you've seen these around. So there's this organization here in Toronto called Shen Yun, right? So this poster gets it done, right? Shen Yun, right? You're in Canada, so do you know about Shen Yun? Have you seen this around? Right? It's like a Chinese dance thing, right? China before communism is what it is, and like it's this big spectacular, right? All of this kind of stuff. This organization popped up after their owners. Right? That's fine, dude. It's not that well known, and you're better off, honestly. So this organization exists here in Canada because it's owned by a group called Falun Gong. Right? Falun Gong was thrown out of China and censored. Right? And it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. Here is their emblem. The group started in 1999. So here you have a racial purity cult, right, that gets thrown out of China for being fascist, pretty overtly fascist, and now they exist here in Canada. Do you know the newspaper, the Epoch Times? The Epoch Times has become somewhat popular amongst conservative-minded people. Well, that's owned by this organization. So while China is throwing literal fascists that use the Nazi swastika in their symbolism out of China, we're adopting them. Like, Falun Gong is one of the better known groups that have been censored by China. And over 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 again, the story is, like, the West will say, oh, China, they're censoring their people. And then you go look at the people that are being censored, and they're literal psychopaths. Like people who are erecting pedophile cults, people who are trying to literally restore Nazism. And you're just like, yeah, great. I'm glad that China is censoring those people. It's shocking that we don't. It's shocking that we don't. That this group, Falun Gong, is allowed to just publish all of this. What do you think happens? So, what do you think happens if you try to launch a propaganda smear campaign against the ruling class as a white American in China? Like, Jay, you really got to think about this stuff, okay? Like, you do not live in a vacuum, right? That free speech absolutists often believe that they should be able to say what they want without consequence, because they themselves don't really face the consequences of what that speech actually means, right? That propaganda campaigns are real, are damaging, create problems, major problems, and need to be taken and are taken seriously by the Chinese. That before Mao, right? So within living memory, the Chinese were experiencing what they call 100 years of national humiliation, where Americans, British, amongst other imperialists, the Japanese, were literally destroying China and exploiting it to the level where China was called the poor man of Asia, right? That China was amongst the poorest countries in Southeast Asia because it was being exploited so ruthlessly by imperialists that had surrounded it. And the Chinese are aware of this, and they understand what the tools are of the West in order to implement this 100 years of humiliation. And the Chinese know that the West wants to do it again. And they're not simply going to allow Westerners to come into their borders and start stirring up dissent without response, because they understand what the consequences of doing so is. Unlike the West, that seems to think you can just say what you like and there's no such thing as consequences. Like, which is wild. Which is wild. What's my opinion on the two Michaels that got arbitrarily detained? First of all, their detention was not arbitrary. Very clearly, the narrative there is that America had Canada pick up a Huawei executive, right? I forget her name offhand, but literally a Chinese citizen just got randomly picked up by Canadian security forces and held, right? And the response to that was to pick up these two guys who are spies. Like, let's not pretend like the two Michaels are just like regular normal dudes. They were spies that the Chinese knew about. They knew about these guys, right? Because Chinese intelligence is not stupid. They understand that these guys are spies. And any intelligent government will understand that a little bit of spying goes on. Yeah, of course they were spies. And a little bit of spying goes on, you know, and honestly, that there's not actually, like, you want to make sure that everybody's on the level, right? A little bit of looking over each other, a little bit of looking at each other, right? Nothing wrong with this, right? Nothing wrong with this. Keeps everybody nicely honest, and it's also good to know who the spies are for exactly such a situation as this, where Madam Meng Wanzhou, right, gets picked up randomly at a Canadian airport. And so my question to you would be, if you, or if somebody you knew, or even if a Canadian citizen that you didn't know just got randomly picked up in Korea, right, would you expect the Canadian government to do something? Would you expect there to be some kind of reprisal? Would you expect there to be some kind of a reaction? And that's basically what it is, that it was a reaction. And then, of course, when Meng got released, so did the two Michaels, right? That there's no big mystery to this story. And the only thing about it that I think I could criticize China for is that they pretended as though the two incidents weren't related. But I think at the same time, like, you kind of want to do that. I would expect the Canadian government to ask why. As a lawful country doing the detaining, there should be due process. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions in that. First of all, that Canada is a lawful country, which, I mean, we've written things down, I suppose. We don't really seem to care about laws, but we write them down, by golly. And then we just roundly ignore the things that we write down. Like, to me, that situation was very strictly a political scuffle, and one in which Canada walked away from losing a lot. We lost a lot of prestige on the international stage because of that. That randomly picking up a citizen from another country, pretty big no. That countries like India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, right? Like, we lost a lot of international prestige over that situation, and a lot of people internationally who understood the situation, who understood what was going on, basically came away from it saying China did exactly the right thing. China defends its own citizens. Like, this is one of the things. This is one of the things that I think people don't understand, Jay, is that we are losing a lot of international prestige. That every action we take, that everything we do on the international stage is making us lose more and more credibility. Is making us lose way more credibility. That the entire rest of the world is starting to understand, and I shouldn't say starting, has come to understand that they need to ally up. That's why you have new organizations like the BRICS organization, right, which is an alliance, a trade alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, and China, and with many other countries looking to join, and that is beginning to isolate us on the world stage. That Saudi Arabia, for example, is starting to get involved in this organization, and they're beginning to trade off of the dollar. That the whole arrangement of the world economy for decades and decades has been that we use our international organizations, such as the IMF, the World Bank, even the UN to a certain degree, in order to maintain our hegemony as a superpower, in order to make it so that people have to do what we say. And one of the big arrangements that has existed in the international markets is that if you're going to trade in the international markets, you have to trade on the dollar. And so what this means is that Americans are getting a free ride, and it's coming to an end now. It's coming to an end now. And Jay, you can ask as many questions as you like, mate. I love talking about China, and I think you're new to the channel, and so I want to really flesh out. I want to try to get into your brain and change hearts and minds. And so please ask as many questions as you like, mate. I'm not sitting here being like, oh, this Jay guy. Oh my God, please, ask away, my man. Because we are looking at a shifting world market. We are looking at a world that is going to change dramatically, and that the center of the world is not going to be America any longer. Oh no, absolutely not, Jay. This is the reason why I stream, dude. Like what you are doing right now, this conversation that I'm having right now with you in this space at this moment is the reason why I hit play. Like it's the reason I do this, because I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. I know that there's a lot of lying going on. The CIA exists. It is a multi-billion-dollar organization that exists specifically to lie to the public. That's its raison d'etre for existing. And you will find most of the time that the things that you think and the things that you believe are simply because you watched a movie that was made by the CIA. What's my opinion on China in the South China Sea, particularly with the Philippines? So, I mean, the history of China in right now at this stage in the game, China is trying to stop a war with America. That's what it's trying to do right now. That America is doing everything it can to begin a war in the South China Sea, and China is doing everything it can in order to prevent that war. And so you could take a look at Taiwan. I don't actually know that much about the situation in the Philippines, because the truth is that I don't think international politics pivots on the Philippines. I don't think the Philippines is actually that crucial a situation. My general understanding is that China is becoming somewhat neutral about the internal affairs of what's going on in the Philippines. Do I think China wants to annex Taiwan? Yes. You can go all the way back to Mao. Like, Taiwan is part of China. Taiwan is not an independent nation. That you can go to the Nixon administration. That ever since the Nixon administration, it's been completely understood in America that Taiwan is part of China. This whole Taiwan is its own independent country grift that has started is literally started from the Biden administration. It's straight up just CIA propaganda in order to cause the kind of war that I've been talking about. That there is an independence movement in Taiwan that is gaining a little bit of steam, but why would you have an independence movement if the country was not already, if the province rather was not already part of the country? That Mao would have already taken Taiwan militarily if not for the Truman administration putting boats through the Taiwan Strait. And that the Chinese, if push comes to shove, they will take the island militarily. They don't want to. That they are moving forward with a policy of one country, two systems, and that there is a general sense in China and in Taiwan as well that a move forward into reunification is beneficial for both parties, and that in Taiwan, the number one, when polled, the Taiwanese are basically like, what's happening now is fine. That there is an independence movement, but it's not as strong as the sort of sense of like, what's happening now is fine. Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, the U.S. is boxing China in through Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, etc. Yeah, it's a containment strategy, and of course, it's not going to work. Like you can take a look. There's this really great document. I shouldn't say great, but it exists. There's this document that the Rand Corporation, which is the Pentagon, produced called "Thinking Through the Unthinkable." Thinkable. You can find this on Google. War with China, Thinking Through the Unthinkable. This is a document that got published in, I think, 2016, if I'm not wrong, in and around that era. And it essentially outlays the American strategy for how to go to war with China. And the strategy is really straightforward. The goal, anyway, is really straightforward. It's to destroy Chinese trade in the South China Sea. That's the goal, is to destroy Chinese trade in the South China Sea. This is from the Pentagon itself, right? And and of course, the Chinese response to this has been to create something called the Belt and Road Initiative. Do you know about the Belt and Road Initiative, bud? Because if you don't know about the Belt and Road Initiative, then this is actually the center of international politics. Yeah. So really think about this, Jay. Really, really ask yourself, why do you not know about the Belt and Road Initiative? Right? Like, the Belt and Road Initiative is a massive hyper-rail system. Hyper-rail's not the right word for it, but rail that can go as fast as 600 kilometers an hour that the Chinese have erected all through China. They're putting it through the Middle East, and they've put it up through Russia and into Europe. This is the center of all international politics right now, and you don't know about it. And I'm not saying that in order to try to dunk on you or insult you or any of that kind of thing. That you don't know about it on purpose. That the ruling class and the prevailing system does not want you to know about the Belt and Road Initiative. They don't want you to understand that China has this enormous trade network on the largest land body with the most amount of people. And this is a fairly old, I think this one comes from like 2018 or something. So I need an updated map. I'd love to find an updated map. But you can see, right? Yeah, and there's tons of propaganda from the West how it failed too, which is ridiculous, right? So you can see that this rail, it goes straight into Moscow. You can see how there's many different rails, right? They're building it. They're definitely going to get it into Afghanistan. So what is it? Well, really think about this, mate. Like, Europe is the number one trading partner of the United States, or has been for quite some time. In the last 15 years, most countries across America, most countries across the world, their number one trading partner has pivoted from America to China. That if America blows up the trade routes by the sea, well, China still has trade routes set up by rail. This is also a big story for the development of Africa. That the next 100 years is going to be about who gets control of Africa. That the quote unquote neutral zone, or the neutral territory about of the rest of the world, oh goodness, sorry, is about Africa. And the Africans are not necessarily pro-American for very obvious and straightforward reasons that you can see. And as you can see, the Chinese are beginning to build rail and infrastructure into Africa. It's an enormous trade organization. It's an enormous series of trade routes. America is shitting itself over this. Because if Russia, China, India, Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Europe all get connected to one another by rail, there's almost nothing America can do about it. Like, there's almost nothing that America can do about it. And the recent, and one of the things that I really like pointing out, right? This rail comes in from Moscow into Minsk, right? And then into Warsaw, which is in Poland, and then into the rest of Europe. Is there some kind of conflict happening here right now? Right? The U.S. has to use ships to compete. That's exactly right. Right? Much more inefficient, much more difficult, much more fraught. And then on top of that, the United States has gutted its manufacturing base. That most of the manufacturing that America does, it commissions through China. Right? Like, the conflict that's existing between the United States and China right now is completely of the United States' own creation. That throughout the 1980s, there was a trade deal called NAFTA that was put into place. This allowed American corporations to ship all of the jobs overseas, many of them into China, and then China used that arrangement in order to enrich itself and its own people. And like, America literally looked at a country who was organizing on Marxist principles, saying things like we should seize the means of production, and instead of allowing the Chinese to seize the means of production, they traded it to them. Like, America is not a very smart country. It's not a very smart people. And so now China it is the manufacturing base of the world now. And it has the ability to create stuff now. And instead of doing what the Americans expected them to do, which is to ruthlessly exploit their own people for the benefit of a small group of rapacious psychopaths, like what happens in America, the Chinese are doing it for the benefit of their own people. That the poverty alleviation programs of Xi Jinping have been widely successful. Even the IMF has said that they've been widely successful. The green initiatives, like China creates more solar panels. China creates more solar panels in a single year than the United States has, and that happens every single year. That as we continue to ignore our commitments to a green energy system and to transitioning into a green energy system, China is moving forward full steam, full bore. We will be purchasing our transition into a green economy from the Chinese. So the fact of the matter is that China is going to be the head of the international community moving forward, because it's the one with the manufacturing base. It's the one with the centralized controlled government. It's the one that's actually improving the quality of life. Do I think there will be an escalation in conflict between the USA and China soon? I mean, yes. Like, America is a dying empire. That it is not capable of thinking rationally. You can see this with what's going on in Ukraine. That what the United States is doing in Ukraine is not rational. And what they are and they have lost all of their credibility on the international stage because of Ukraine. And the rest of the world, Africa, Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, as if the Middle East thought America had credibility anyway, but India, China, certainly China, Russia, absolutely. So the vast majority of the world's population, and that's not even including South America, right? That's not even including South America, have come to understand that America no longer has credibility. It has lost the authority to lead. It is not viewed as the leader. It is not viewed as the free world. It is not viewed that way internationally. That there is an awful lot of skepticism now about America and its role in the world and how it is operating in the world. And the Chinese rightly see the situation that's going on in Taiwan as America doing what they did in Ukraine to China. And the rest of the world understands that it's only Americans. It's only Americans that seem to buy in to this ridiculous narrative that Putin is just a bad guy who wanted resources and invading and all of that kind of stuff. It's only Americans who buy into that, because Americans are the most propagandized people on the planet. And it's not close. It's like not close at all. And anybody who looks at a place like North Korea and says like, oh, they're super propagandized, like, sure, bud, like, you're the most heavily propagandized person that exists. And if you think that Ukraine had the right to defend itself and all this kind of stuff, it's like you just don't know what's going on. Karl Marxman says what the U.S. is doing follows a certain rationale, that being the rationale of capital accumulation. Arms dealing is the only place the U.S. has left to accrue those lovely pieces of paper, yeah? Good opportunity, guys, to say like, share, subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles, hit the notification. I've got a Patreon in the Discord. Think about donating, right? It gets you, I've got a Patreon in the description. It gets you into the Discord. And if you donate at a larger level, I'm going to start doing shout-outs. I just need to get my shit together and actually sit down and do this stuff. But you know how it is. Life whisks us all away. What do I think the best country to live in would be? I don't really like this question. Because, like, if every country has its positives and negatives, and it sort of depends on the social strata that you find yourself in. Like, any country is good to live in if you're a billionaire, right? Any country to live in would be shitty if you were homeless. Like, the question to me, and every country has its positives and every country has its negatives. Like, every place that you can go is going to have sort of foibles. And again, it's one of these things where, like, we don't live in a vacuum. Like, we have friends and families and connections and all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't know, dude. Well, for billionaires, they like to hoard wealth, so they'll go somewhere that they can hide away. I will say this about China, that if the things that were happening in China was happening in my country, I would never shut up about it. Like, I would never shut up about it. I would be the biggest cheerleader for Canada ever if like two of the things that were happening in China were happening here. That the trajectory that China is on and the momentum that it has caught because of its policies and its decisions over the last several decades is going to put it, like, in 20 years, China is going to be so far ahead of us, we will be absolutely baffled by it. Like, we are actually going to be like, there's just going to be a moment when people are going to genuinely start asking themselves how this happened, right? And I will still be here, presumably, telling you exactly how it happened, right? Yeah, CR Who, you're right. Like, you're right. It is and I want to find a better map than this for the Belt and Road Initiative, because you're correct that they do use river systems and they do use that kind of stuff. It also doesn't include NEOM, right, which isn't officially part of the Belt and Road Initiative, but I feel like you've got to be kind of, like, you got to be fooling yourself if you think that that's not going to be part of it. I mean, for me personally, I like living in Canada. It's relatively safe, although I was born here. I don't have much experience abroad. Yeah, I mean, Jay, there's nothing wrong about being happy with the situation you find yourself in. Like, I'm not one of these self-loathing sort of Canadian types. Like, we're dealing with the situation as it unfolds in front of us. My major thing is that we could be doing a lot better. Like this place could be a lot cooler. This place could be a lot better, right? Oh, Jay, don't worry about that. I understand. Believe me, the number one reason why people stop donating to me is that their financial circumstances change. It's the number one reason. And it's not close. Like, every so often I get some kind of weird comment or some kind of thing, but, like, for the most part, people are like, yeah, I was donating to you, but then, you know, I got to pay my own bills. And it's like, yeah, 1 in 4 Canadians are not able to pay their bills, Jay. Like, 1 in 4 Canadians are not paying their bills. So I understand that the people who I'm talking to and the people who are most likely to want to donate to me are people who are not able to pay their bills. So please don't feel bad about that at all. I throw my lot in with the forces of the universe, and in the hopes that one day some wealthy patron will come by, that I will find my angles one day, and that a wealthy patron will come and say, "Hey, you do good work, and you've got a good voice, and you seem like you know what you're on about. Well, here's $5,000 a month. Go mad." That's sort of my hope. We'll see how it goes. Neom to UAE to Oman is definitely part of it. Bypasses the Horn of Africa. Yeah, there may be a bridge. I think that my theory, and of course, because Neom is going to be right here, right? This is where Neom is. I think that they're just going to put an underground tunnel underneath the Gulf of Aqaba. I don't think they're going to do a bridge, because I think a bridge is a piece of infrastructure that the Americans can bomb. And we know the Americans like to bomb things. Whereas an underground system would be much more difficult. And that's my theory. That's my thought. And like Neom is this enormous city that they're building. So I just think that they're moving forward with this enormous super project. And so sky's the limit, right? Sky's the limit. I know that if I was the person responsible for drawing up the plans for Neom, I would be thinking underground tunnel, right? Like, we're not building a bridge. Like, what are you talking about? But they may do a bridge, so we'll see. I try to keep myself distracted by exercising, hope for better days. Yeah, not a bad way to go. I know that for myself, a big reason why I do this, Jay, is if I don't do this, then I inflict people around me with it. And it's not fair. Like, it's not fair. It's a burden, right? It puts a burden on people. And I have had moments where I've thought about walking away from this, and then I realize, like, oh, I would actually just go back to alienating my friends and family, right? And so doing this acts as a cathartic process. Yeah, event, if you prefer, sure. It's a way to grapple with the harsh realities of what it means to live in a system of capital, and to constantly deal with the kind of sad reality. Because the thing I think is the saddest about this is that we have so many resources and so much wind at our backs that we could make a place that would be beautiful to live in. Like, we literally could say to our public, you only need to work 3 days a week. The work is easy. Food and shelter are freely available, so you could move around and do what you like. We could be focused on making art, living in the world. The whole stress and financial burden of everything could just be gone. Like, and I actually am genuinely of the opinion that we could get all of that set up and ready to go in less than a year. Like, the impediment to it is literally 5 psychos, and that's it. Jay Peterson, so Epstein, without a doubt, had a pedophile island that the elite used, like Trump? Yeah, bud. Yeah, bud. I feel like the Jeffrey Epstein story is another one of those stories that is the dead center of the culture, which is why we never talk about it, right? That Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, they all went to this pedophile island. For God's sakes, we've got confessions from people that Donald Trump raped on that island. Like, the Epstein didn't kill himself, yeah, and the like, you are talking about a pedophile system. Yeah, they'll never be held accountable, of course, right? And so the idea, so Carl, this story here, right? Chomsky, quote unquote, hung out with him, got defensive when asked about it. I can understand why Chomsky got defensive about it, because Chomsky understands what's going on with that they are attempting to use Epstein in the manner that Epstein existed for. That the goal of the CIA and the FBI, as Epstein was definitely a CIA and FBI asset, is to get him in the same room with everybody, specifically so that they can run this kind of a scam, right? Specifically. That if you actually delve in to the circumstances and the situation in which Epstein gets involved, it's not like Chomsky was seeking Epstein out. It's not like Chomsky was like, boy, I need to get connected to this pedophile. That instead what happens is that Chomsky wants to get connected. I believe the big one that everybody really talks about is that Chomsky wanted to get involved with like someone like al-Bashir in order to attempt to negotiate a peace deal, right? Attempt to negotiate a peace deal. And the liaison that gets involved between Chomsky and al-Bashir in order to negotiate this peace deal is Jeffrey Epstein. And so what's Chomsky supposed to do? Right? Is he supposed to just say, no, I don't want to be involved because there's this guy? Like, okay, so you'll never be able to get anything done. You'll never meet these people. You'll never actually get connected to this kind of stuff because there's always going to be some scummy little dingy rat, some gross little CIA FBI asset that exists in the conversation. And when it comes up, when the New York Times questions Chomsky about it, Chomsky knows exactly what's happening. That's why Chomsky's response is they don't care. Like, they don't care about what happened. They don't care about the truth of it, right? And so, like, to believe that the fact that Chomsky was in the same room with Epstein, or that there was a situation in which Epstein was involved in, and then that somehow discredits Chomsky, is to just fall for the trap. It's just to buy in to the grift that the CIA is running. So I suggest that you don't. Like, I'm not like a Chomsky head. Like, I think that when it comes to his observations on communist countries especially, Chomsky is wrong most of the time. That Michael Parenti's work is much better. But Chomsky's domestic work is, like, undeniable. Like, his critique of the American empire is undeniable. Jay says, so the FBI knows about it and they simply don't care, or they're not allowed to care. At some point, the ball is dropped. Well, the FBI cares about it a lot, right? The FBI cares about it a lot because it's their job to protect it, right? So they know about it and they care about it, but their job is to make sure that the people who are involved in the process, specifically the capital holders that are involved in the process, are protected. That's their job. So they care. Like, their role is not to bring people to justice. Like, that's not their role. Their role is not to go, oh my goodness, there's a pedophile sex ring over here. We've got to go in there and break it up and be good people. Like the Freedom of Hope movie tries to convince people that Homeland Security cares about. Like, that's not their job. Their job is to maintain the system of capital, right? Well, Jay, always remember that depression is one of these steps of grief. And we are a culture that is in grieving, right? We are in grieving. And depressing is part of it. Going through a period of depression is part of it. That's the path to acceptance. William Barr was a CIA lawyer in Church Committee days. 1975, wrote Iran-Contra pardons as AG 1990-ish, got Epstein his job with his dad, then killed Epstein in custody. Unless you're talking about William Barr, you are gaslighting the story of Barr for CIA, Epstein for Mossad, Maxwell for M16. This was strictly an FVEY compromat op. Barr's cult of consecutive Catholics also named 6 out of 9 of the current SCOTUS. Yeah, I mean, like, the whole thing's fucked, eh? Just expose everyone tied to Barr, and you'll have the whole package. Did Chomsky actually say that Epstein served his time, therefore paid his debt to society? That ignores the greatest deal ever. Yeah. I mean, Epstein literally was convicted of child sex trafficking and spent 2 years in prison. Like, what are you talking about? What a sweetheart deal. Parenti's Gods and His Demons was incredible. Listen to it on audiobook. Got a physical copy to share. Obviously started with Black Shirts and Red. but man, he and I are so aligned on Christianity. I'm actually going through the assassination of Julius Caesar right now with, have a good one, Jay. Thanks for coming in, bud. That his work, The Assassination of Julius Caesar, is actually really, really interesting, and goes through his thesis about the assassination of Julius Caesar is that Caesar was actually passing reforms to the to Roman society in order to make it so that there was less burden on the poor, basically, and that this is the primary reason why he's assassinated. And I think it's fairly compelling, right? And what's really interesting is, as Michael Parenti goes through it, you're like, this sounds a lot. This sounds a lot like what's going on. Acosta, the first AG to let Epstein off, said clearly that he was told Epstein was an asset, i.e. CIA, Mossad. The Five Eyes includes Canada, New Zealand, Australia, so we're probably in on it. So, CR Who, do you have a good source? Like, is there a good book that somebody should be taking a look at? Because you seem to know a lot of specificity. You seem to know a lot of the specificity. And I myself would like to read something more serious about Epstein and the scandal surrounding Epstein. Because, I mean, to me, the Epstein scandal is the center of the culture. It's very obvious that he was killed in a prison cell in order to protect the powerful. It's very clear that that was the case. And it's sort of interesting that that our culture has been taken over by this sort of anti-trans crazy, ridiculous nonsense. Karl Marxman, can you say more on Parenti's assassination of Caesar? That sounds right up my alley. I mean, that's basically the long and short of it. Like, it's very thorough. He starts at the... he kind of lays the groundwork for what was going on in the Roman society when Julius Caesar is born. He goes through the writings of Cicero, amongst others, and the lead up to like what was going on in the Roman society, and then Julius Caesar showing up and going through the life of Julius Caesar, trying to set up who the character of Caesar actually is based on the evidence that we have. And one of the big things that Parenti really does over and over again in the book is he points out how often Western historians will take the side of the assassins, that modern historians often agree with people like Cicero that the masses are these repugnant, mobbish idiots, right? And that they should be ruled in the manner that they're being ruled in. Whereas, of course, Parenti doesn't take that position and takes a different position and tries to present a case from the perspective of the plebeian, perspective of the worker in the society, and tries to paint a more complex picture of the society based on what was going on. And that the sort of common way that Caesar is portrayed is as this sort of unflinching, uncaring dictator. Whereas Parenti points out that, like, if that's the case, then everyone around him thought otherwise. Like that Julius Caesar was a widely popular figure in Rome amongst the people because he was doing things to benefit the people. And this, of course, for the ruling class, the entrenched oligarchy in Rome, is untenable. And one of the most interesting things I think about Julius Caesar is that they wanted to assassinate him to get rid of some of these reforms. But they found that after they assassinated him, they were unable to get rid of the reforms because of a fear of civil war. And that the assassination itself is actually what led to the demise of many of these figures. Like, Cicero is assassinated back essentially because of this. And like And it's a fascinating tale, and Parenti tells it well. Best author on the Operation Underworld World War II to Meyer Langsy gang to Robert Maxwell gang to Bart Epstein gang, Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb. Oh, I think One Nation Under Blackmail. Yeah, I think I saw her once. I think she was on Yes. I should try to get this, is what I should do. One Nation Under Blackmail. I should see if there's an audiobook version of this floating around. I've been listening to audiobooks on my way to work is how I've been doing it. And I believe that I saw her on Jimmy Dore. And I had thought to myself I should try to find some of her work, and then of course promptly forgot about it, because that's how I roll. Carl says, I'd like to note that Brutus, a famous Stoic, is often held up as a revolutionary by modern Stoics. For them to prop up a historical reactionary as a revolutionary would not surprise me. Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be too surprised that the reason why a group of wealthy oligarchs decide to assassinate someone is because he was trying to help people. Right? Seems pretty common. Here's something that I wanted to bring to the forefront, because I've been saying for a long time, guys. I've been saying for a long time, we're going to get some explicitly fascist, pro-fascist superheroes. And I think here we go. Right? Now, before we get into this, let me say this movie doesn't exist yet. We don't know anything about the character, really, outside of the fact that Captain America 4 casts Israeli hero Sabra. Captain America, New World Order, will see the MCU debut of the Israeli superhero Sabra. So, yep, it's the IDF thirst trap, curves and all, yeah. And so at this stage in the game, we could say pretty clearly that the state of Israel is a fascist nation, right? And it's not going to be a surprise to me at all if the ethos of fascism is essentially her backing, right? Is essentially how she operates in the world. Caesar versus Cato is the great conflict of the 1st century BC. Cicero is more in the middle, weaseling it out both ways as the wind blows, which is why he's remembered worse than the other two. Snake, good to see you, bud. Sabra used to be an Israeli mutant, not a super soldier. Interesting how they changed that dynamic. Super soldier. I don't know, dude. It's all the same to me. Like, it's just a comment on the culture. We already did this. People in the U.S. keep talking about preventing fascism. The president is a fascist. The government is a fascist. Fascism has already arrived. Why do you think so many governments around the world are finally and openly banding together in order to keep U.S. fascism in check? People are putting it together, man. People are putting it together. Seize and nationalize Amazon. The infrastructure is all there for supply chains, transportation networks, etc. The spreadsheets have already been done for us. Well, a mutant outside and a super soldier is a proto-cop. I mean, Augusta was popular in Rome as well. The empire didn't lead to more representation for the masses either. Yeah, no kidding. Like, I've always come to believe that Julius Caesar, if he were to come to life today, I think the thing that he'd be most impressed by is that we're still using his calendar. That the calendar that we use, even though we call it the Gregorian calendar, comes from Julius Caesar. I think that would be really cool. That he would come into reality and be like, oh shit, That's my calendar. That's awesome. Philippines has gone back and escalated the son of the U.S. puppet dictator Marco, and he has allowed the U.S. military bases back. So China has become worried about the escalation. Yeah, I mean, look, if I'm China, I'd be very worried about the United States in Southeast Asia right now. I'd be very, very worried. Okay, guys. I feel as though I have run out of steam. I'm going to call this one early today. I just need to go to sleep, man. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.